So here in this video, we're just going to jump right into the course, if that's okay with you. If you've ever watched any of my courses before in the past, you're going to know that I'm not one who likes to waste time, and I'm also not one for going, delving deep into the historic background and all the facts and figures and those sorts of things. And the reason for this being is because information alone doesn't really serve anyone. Yes, there's some people who like to think that they know it all, and some people who just like to remember information. But what I'm going to suggest to you at this stage of the course is that you can have all the information in the world, but if you don't understand how to apply it, then all your information is absolutely worthless and valueless. So all I am going to do throughout this course is share with you the foundational ideas that this entire science has been built upon. I mean, this is an introduction course just to introduce you to the basics, so that by the time you've finished this course, you can in turn make a well-informed decision as to whether this is a life science that you would be interested in investing more time into. What I am going to do in this video, I'm going to give reference to the two founding fathers, Mr. Albert Ellis, who was a US-based psychologist who operated back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and Mr. Aaron Beck, who's actually, as far as I'm aware, still alive today. He was a US-based psychiatrist. Now, these two gentlemen back then had been recognized as experts in their chosen fields, and what they would do every now and again was come together to compare notes, share ideas, and their findings, the trends, what it was that they were discovering and learning as they continued to practice on the clients whom they were serving back in the day. And what they began to recognize was a recurring trend, a correlation, if you like, between the quality of a person's thinking and the quality of a person's emotional well-being. And this was the first time that this idea had ever been considered. Up until that point, much of psychology and psychiatry had been built on more of the foundational ideas of gentlemen such as the late Sigmund Freud, who kind of suggested in an indirect way that people are just broken. Some people are broken by their pasts. And if you think about it from a psychological perspective, if this idea was true that people are fundamentally broken, then that means that it's down to the psychologist or the therapist to in turn fix them. Which, if you think about it, from a client's perspective, well, that's not a particularly empowering idea to consider oneself as broken. So what these two gentlemen had begun to ponder over and question was if there was, in fact, a more effective way of helping people, not by the therapist doing everything within their power to fix the client or the other person, but to actually converse with them in a slightly different way, to help modify the quality of the client's thinking, just to see and evaluate and assess whether, if the client was able to modify and make changes in their thinking, would they then in turn be able to modify and make changes in their emotional well-being? And over a number of years, they found that this was very much the case. I mean, if you think about it, think about times in life that you've ended up. I don't know if there's ever been a time in life where you've just completely erupted with anger or rage or something like that. Now, what I'm going to think about is an experience that's actually quite recent. Around about 3 or 4 days ago, I was driving home. I think I'd been doing my grocery shopping. I was driving home, and we're driving up a street in a local housing estate, and this car overtook me in a housing estate. Now, there could have been children crossing the road. There could have been cats or dogs or anything. And as soon as this happened, my natural response was of anger and rage, and I peeped my horn and I flashed my lights, and my car window was down, so my fist was going, "You so and so, you this, you that, you the next thing." And if you think about it, I don't know how old you are or if you've ever experienced road rage, but here in Scotland, well, we are historically a nation of quite angry men and women, and road rage is quite a common thing. So anyway, what I'm getting towards, helping you to hopefully consider here, is an idea that if we assume the worst of a person. Let's just take, for example, this guy who overtook me in the car. I'm thinking that this guy's just impatient. He's a completely inconsiderate driver. The guy's an idiot. The guy's a fool. And in turn, because I'm thinking these things, I begin to feel angry, or rage. One of the two, road rage. But what would happen if I was to be presented with some new information? All right, it might be the case that when you're thinking, oh, if someone was to overtake you like that, you'd be angry too. Well, what would happen if we were to find out and discover that the man's wife had just been rushed into hospital because she'd been hit by a bus? What would happen if we were to discover that his wife, who was 7 months pregnant, had been rushed to hospital because she'd had a miscarriage? How would we then feel about this guy? Would we feel quite so angry towards him? Would we feel as full of rage as what we perhaps previously felt, or would we perhaps be slightly more graceful and courteous and extending the guy a little bit more patience? And the reason why I share this with you is because as human beings, and this was something that Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck really pointed out for the first time in psychological history, was that, none of us are perfect, and sometimes we're all equally guilty, and we can all be equally guilty of jumping to conclusions and getting the wrong end of the stick. So, CBT isn't about positive thinking. It's not about thinking more positively so we can feel happier. It's about thinking more accurately. So over the years that followed, Mr. Albert Ellis and Mr. Aaron Beck produced a series of models, ideologies, and frameworks for us as potential aspiring CBT practitioners to use on our friends, family members, or the clients that we eventually go on to serve, to help them better understand how it is that the quality of our or their thinking actually impacts the quality of our emotional well-being. So, in the additional material section of this video lecture, I'm actually going to attach a couple of external links for those of you who really would like to get a much deeper understanding of the history of these two fantastic men. And it's up to you. If you can read this stuff, you can take it, you can leave it. Personally, I've read it, I've studied all this kind of stuff, but I do appreciate it's not for everyone. So it is an additional material and resource that you can take or you can leave. And what I've also included into this video lecture is a course learning log / journal, because I know that many people like to take notes. This is a PDF that you can download, and there's a little bit of space inside of the workbook for every single lecture. And what we're going to urge you to do as we progress through the course is just simply take note, jot down any big ideas, any aha moments, or any concepts that you just really like the sound of. Because this, more than anything else, is going to help you to gauge the value that you're ultimately going to receive throughout this course. So, this is pretty much the founding idea. We're going to be bulking and expanding this right out. I do promise you that there's nothing in life that can make us feel any way whatsoever. It doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what people do. It doesn't matter whether the cows are standing up, sitting down, whether it's bucketing down with rain, or whether the sun's out. None of these factors outside of us can make us feel anything internally. The only thing that can impact the quality of our emotional well-being on a day-to-day context is ultimately the quality of our thinking and what it is that we choose to focus on. Now, I don't know if you're convinced just yet. If so, fantastic. Let's commence. If not, don't worry about that. Over the next few videos, I'm going to share with you a little bit more information, a few other ideas that's hopefully going to help you to better understand and grasp exactly what it is that I'm talking about here.